Welcome to Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks. Andy Behrens, Sal Vetri, I'm Jason Fitz, and for the next 30 minutes, we are going to get you ready for a juggernaut of a Thursday night matchup. It's Week 7. It's my scheduling hell. Let's just be honest. There is so much football at so many different times. We got London football. We got Monday night doubleheaders. We got Thursday, but like games are spread all over everywhere. I don't even know what to do. Cats and dogs living together. It's mass hysteria. You guys can get involved. Hashtag AskFFL. We're going to get your questions in the YouTube chat. You can get your questions out on social media. We will answer them as the show goes on. And usually this is where I queue up Thursday night football because we're ready to talk about the game. But no, nay, not today, because there are huge storylines that are impacting everybody in the world of fantasy football, not the least of which are two superstar household name wide receivers on the move. So let's take a look at these trades real quick. Andy Behrens, Amari Cooper is now a Buffalo Bill. Your thoughts?
Oh, my first thought is that this is just exactly what Buffalo needed, right? This is a battle-tested receiver who can win downfield, can win outside, can win sort of the bread and butter intermediate routes. Keon Coleman hasn't been able to do that consistently for Buffalo, which is fine. He's a rookie, and Matt Collins was never going to be able to do it. Cooper is actually coming off his best season. He gave us 83 yards per game last year, over 17 yards per catch. He was great in the Joe Flacco weeks, and now he gets Josh Allen. I love this deal. If they couldn't get Davante Adams, this was what they needed pretty desperately. Cooper does have an adjustment period ahead, right? So maybe we're not super bullish this week. I've got him in the mid-30s at receiver. But let's remember that he has actually been traded in season before when he went to Dallas 6 years ago. After that deal, he was immediately great. Just what the Cowboys needed. He scored in his first game, kept rolling from there. So this is just a terrific landing spot, I think. And honestly, it just elevates the whole offense. The nice thing here, the player that's hurt most by this is Matt Collins, who nobody was using in fantasy anyway.
That is fact. And it'll be interesting to see what Amari looks like with a very mobile quarterback that makes throws off schedule. It's going to be a beautiful thing. That's the only former Raider that was traded. Oh, no, it's not. Davante Adams headed to the New York Jets. We won't need my thoughts on it. Sal, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, initially, we finally get a great Garrett Wilson game in prime time. He's breaking tackles, explosive plays. I thought it was his best game of the season. And less than 12 hours later, Davante Adams is on his team. And if you're a fantasy manager of Garrett Wilson, it just feels bad. Now, I don't think it's a death blow for Garrett Wilson. I think both of these guys could coexist. But I think it's going to limit both of them from having like a top 10 rest of season wide receiver season. They're both two talented receivers. When I look at it for this week specifically, I give a slight lean to Garrett Wilson. Two top 24 guys. You have Davante Adams getting traded midweek. Who knows if there's some rust with Aaron Rodgers? Who knows if this phantom hamstring injury is actually real and that could limit him for maybe a week. But when I'm looking rest of season, I want Davante Adams over Garrett Wilson. There is something to this connection between these two guys. That's why Davante is on this team. He wanted to play with Aaron Rodgers. Their last 4 seasons together, he was averaging 11 targets per game. And I know these guys are older and you can say what you want about Davante being a 32-year-old receiver and maybe he doesn't look that great this year. I would probably put that on his situation a little bit. This is a guy who's highly talented, has that mind melt with Aaron Rodgers that you don't have to worry about, oh, what is happening? They just look at each other, especially in the red zone, and they know the route that they're running. That's hard to beat out if you're Garrett Wilson. So I want Davante rest of the season, slight lean to Wilson for this week.
Yeah, maybe the 5 smartest minutes of TV I've seen all season this year. At the beginning of the morning, Dan Orlovsky this morning broke down some Davante Adams. I would implore everybody to go back and watch it. It really speaks to how good he is right now. All right. I can't talk about it. It hurts my feelings too much. All right, Thursday Night Football, I can talk about it. Hurts my feelings to have to tell you this is a great game. It's not, but we have players that are playing in it, so we'll talk about it. The Broncos at Saints. Broncos favored by 3, which is a statement. Over-under on this one, 37 also feels fat even at that. There are some inactives that we need to keep an eye on. The reason this game is what it is because of these inactives. Derek Carr, inactive with the oblique. Taysom Hill, inactive with the ribs. Thanks. My fantasy football team really loves that. Chris Olave, inactive with the concussion. Rashid Shaheed has now been put on injured reserve, had season-ending surgery today. So obviously that is a huge storyline. Sal, let's talk about your biggest storyline in this game.
Yeah, it has to do with those Saints wide receivers. And who is, you might find yourself tonight, Spencer Rattler throws a pass and you say, who caught that? You're probably going to be saying that for most of the night tonight, because what you're going to be getting, lining up right now, it looks like the starters will be a 5th round rookie in Bub Means out of Pittsburgh and likely an undrafted free agent or wide receiver who's also a rookie. And Mason Tipson, this is a guy that was getting some hype in training camp because of his 4.3 speed. But for the most part, it's a rough week to be on a short week right now for these Saints. You have none of your wide receivers, your starters. You have your rookie quarterback making his second ever start behind a shaky offensive line. And you really didn't get too much practice time to get some sort of chemistry with these guys heading into this game. So I'm concerned for the entire offense tonight. It's not really a situation, even with Patrick Surtain out for the Broncos, that I want to be starting any of these guys. Like Bum Memes, the only way I could recommend him is if you're in maybe like a 14 to 16 team league or deeper, because at this point, I'm really finding it difficult to trust Rattler to throw for even 150 yards tonight on this short week. So it's a big storyline, but it might be an ugly one.
All right, Andy Behrens, your biggest storyline in this game?
Well, biggest is maybe not the word that I would use for any storyline attached to this particular game. I'm struggling to come up with a second one here. It's bleak. It's really rough landscape. We aren't messing around with anyone involved in this one except maybe Alvin Kamara and the team defenses. But I will tell you that I at least have my eye on, in a peripheral way, Denver's backfield. Javonte Williams has been the clear number one back to this point in the season, but it hasn't been great. He's stuck at 3.6 yards per carry. That's exactly what he averaged last year. Hasn't reached 80 rushing yards in any game so far this season. Hasn't reached the end zone, and he's fumbled twice, including last week. So let's be watching the usage tonight for Audric Estime. He's a rookie out of Notre Dame, barely played this season, only 4 carries, but 2 of those carries have actually gone for over 10 yards. Sean Payton name-checked him this week as a player he would specifically like to see get additional opportunities. I think that's real. Again, Williams is not playing at a level that should prevent other backs from seeing the field. Estime, coming off a huge collegiate season against a pretty tough schedule, 18 touchdowns, average 6.5 yards per carry. I think he has enough juice to carve out a real role in Denver's offense. And again, the competition for touches is not too daunting.
It's just a name I want everybody to whisper. I just feel like you always have to say, Audric Estime. It just feels so cool when he says it. So I'm with you. I want to see a lot of carries for him. All right, let's get into some money. It's time to bring the noise, bring the funk. That's right, bring the props, where we give you a prop that we really like. I like to think of this as like my music background, like Sal 3, Andy 2, me 1. You know, in my music background, when you've got 1, that means you're the number 1. That means you're winning. I don't know. I'm just trying to make this feel good. Andy Behrens, let's get back on the schneid for you. Like, what do you got for a prop you like this week?
Yeah, I am once again going with a quarterback rushing total. I seem kind of locked into this lane. Give me Bo Nix over 25.5 rushing yards. We got a lot of weird players in this game. It was very hard for me not to take a kicking prop tonight, but I succumbed to the peer pressure. Nix went well over this number last week. He's reached 25 rushing yards in 4 different games this season. He's averaging 30 rushing yards per game. Hasn't been great for him as a passer. Hasn't exactly been a clinic. In fact, there's at least a chance that he will end up averaging more yards per carry this year than yards per pass attempt. He's pretty close right now. The Saints just allowed Baker Mayfield to clear this rushing total. So I think Nix can definitely get there. Again, it's been a struggle for him through the air, but the rushing ability is so obvious, and I think it's worth betting on this week.
Yeah, I'm just impressed you didn't give us a kicker prop. I would have supported it. Sal, give us a prop you like out there.
Yeah, I'm looking at Alvin Kamara on the Saints, and I'm looking at his rushing yards. I'm taking the under 72.5 rushing yards, and this has nothing to do with Kamara's skill set. He's been great. As of right now, he's the running back 1 in fantasy on the season, and he's averaging 114 total yards per game. That's rushing plus receiving. So again, nothing about him. It's just this environment tonight. Like we mentioned earlier, you're getting no wide receivers for the Saints out there. They're starters at least. Spencer Rattler in his second start ever on a short week. So if you're the Broncos defense, and by the way, a top 10 run defense this season, what are you worried about? Who are you worried about hurting you tonight? Probably only Alvin Kamara for the most part. So why not bring an extra 1 or 2 defenders in the box? See a lot of 6-7 man boxes for Alvin Kamara tonight, and that's a concern. Now, he is a talented player. He could still get you there, but I think the situation is brutal. Even if he sees 20 carries in this game and they're playing with a positive game script, he still might not get you there. So I'm taking the under.
By the way, now I'm suddenly wishing I'd taken the over on total punts in this game, because that's got to be a moneymaker. But I will give you an under, because why give overs? We hate nice things here. Everything, Sal, you just said is part of why I like the under for Spencer Rattler at 189.5 passing yards. I don't think that the Saints are going to be able to run the football effectively, which is going to put them in negative down and distance. And when they're negative down and distance behind on the chains, that Denver defense, which is very good, even though I've been tough on the Broncos, that Denver defense is going to get after Spencer Rattler, which is going to force him to make quick decisions that I don't think he's ready to make on a short practice week. So you combine all of those things, this just feels like the sort of game that could turn into an ugly disaster for Spencer Rattler quickly. I don't think it's some huge indictment on where Spencer's going to be. Like, we don't know yet in his career trajectory where he's going to end up. I just don't think a second start with these circumstances would be favorable for anybody, not the least of which is Spencer Rattler. So there we go. We're all taking unders in this, except for Andy with the positive on the quarterback rushing. I don't know how I feel about that. All right. I know how I feel about bench warmers. Let's get into some bench warmers. And when we say that, we're talking about players to stash for a late season surge. Be the smart person that takes all of the grief for somebody who's just riding on the bench. All right, Sal, who you got?
Yeah, I'm starting with the wide receiver, Noah Brown. And if you don't know, he's on the Washington Commanders. He got to that team in week 2. This is a former Texans receiver, and it took him a couple weeks to get ramped up. But as soon as week 4, he was the number 2 receiver on this team behind Terry McLaurin in terms of route run and snaps. But unfortunately, in week 4, he injured his groin. He ended up missing week 5, but he returned in week 6, and I was interested to see his usage in that game against the Ravens. And right away, he goes back to being the wide receiver 2 in usage. That's how much they trust this veteran, 28-year-old receiver already. He ends up seeing 8 targets, leads the wide receivers in receiving yards. And I think there's something to this moving forward. Like, we're so high on the Commanders offense. Sure, we know Terry McLaurin is a piece of it that we want to have. But if we're looking at this as a top 5, top 10 offense, can't Jaden Daniels sustain multiple pass catchers? And I would bet on a guy like Noah Brown, who as recent as last year had multiple 150-yard games. I had Rashid Shaheed in a couple of leagues, deeper leagues. I had to drop him today. I picked up Noah Brown. He's available in well over 90% of Yahoo leagues right now.
All right, Andy, I mean, you're our fantasy expert one. I don't know what you know about bench warmers, but when you got to think about the bench warmer life, give us somebody that you're looking at.
Yeah, I would certainly not advise anyone to actually play DeAndre Hopkins right now. He's available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues. No one's leaning on him. Realistically, we should probably not be involved with the Titans passing game while Will Levis is at the controls, because it does not look great. Tennessee is now 1-4, and they have the Bills and the Lions up next. So I can't really see a scenario in which they are not deadline sellers, which means the possibility of a new home for Hopkins. I'd let him ride on my bench for a couple weeks just to see if he might land with, say, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Saints, who are going to be in action tonight, the Commanders, which would kind of mess up your Noah Brown plans, right? Like, that seems possible. Almost any trade destination for Hopkins would put him back in the starting discussion in fantasy. You're obviously not getting vintage DeAndre at 32 years old, but this is still a proven player. He's got incredible hands, and he can help a contender.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice if you could just play with a capable quarterback at any possible level. Sal, all right, who do you got for a bench warmer?
Yeah, I'm looking at a running back to stash. You're not starting this guy, you're stashing him right now. And it's Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals. Look, the rookie running backs have been the talk of the town as recent as this past week. You see Bucky Irving, Tyron Tracy, even Ray Davis all having very strong fantasy days. And honestly, at some point this year, I think we can see it for Trey Benson. Now, when he landed on the Cardinals in the NFL draft in the 3rd round, it wasn't the best spot. James Conner was there. He's a reliable veteran. But right now, the Cardinals are 2-4. They have a tough schedule coming up. If they slide to 2-5, 2-6, maybe they start to get some of their younger players involved more. And right now, James Conner is dealing somewhat with an ankle injury. This is a guy who's on average in his NFL career missed 4 games per season. So there's a chance towards the second half of the season, midway point, Trey Benson actually gets a start or 2. He looked good this past week, had an explosive run. And in the fantasy playoffs, if Conner was to miss time or Benson starts to take over, they face the Rams and the Panthers, 2 of the worst run defenses in the NFL. I'd be stashing right now Trey Benson.
I just want to know what it's like to be in a playoff conversation in the fantasy league. God, I'm killing this year. Andy, what do you got?
Yeah, Sal's got the right idea here with the backup running backs. I'm going to go with another rookie, Kimani Vidal. He's an easy answer here. He's coming off a regular season debut in which his first touch went for a long touchdown, and he played a quarter of the snaps for the Chargers. He's essentially now the understudy to J.K. Dobbins in L.A. That's a player who, of course, has a well-known injury history. Gus Edwards on the IR right now, out of the mix. And Vidal was immediately impactful in his first game. He was a 6th-round pick out of the Sun Belt Conference, actually led the nation in rush attempts last year, went over 1,600 rushing yards. He is a proven receiver as well. Great hands on that first catch for the touchdown. last week. He's the sort of player who could legitimately solve your fantasy backfield problems if things break in his favor, and that's the sort of difference maker we need to try to be stashing right now. Promising young rookie. He's now one step away from really one of the better gigs in fantasy.
Love it. All right, if there was a problem, we'll solve it. It's time to solve your problems. Make your pick. All right, this is where you guys have submitted some questions for us. We'll get some answers for you coming out. And I promise I won't quote any more Vanilla Ice for the rest of the show. First question comes up from Chief Brody. And Chief Brody asks, this is complicated. Shakir, Myers, Atwell, Jennings, which one are you sitting? Sal, what do you think?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because as of right now, Jakobi Meyers and Jauan Jennings have not been practicing this week. So you might have your answer just based on injury, but let's just play the game like they're all playing in here. If they're all playing and they're all active, I actually want to be sitting Khalil Shakir. I believe Amari Cooper is going to play this week. That's somewhat up in the air. I believe if that's the case, Shakir becomes the number 3 option on this team behind Cooper and Dalton Kincaid in target shares. You're also in a situation where the Bills are 9 to 10 point favorites depending on the book that you look at. And that's not the best spot to be in if you're like the number 2 or 3 pass catching option on your team when they're probably going to be running in the second half often. And Shakir's coming back from this ankle injury still. He'd be the guy I'm sitting, assuming all 4 of those players were to play.
All right, let's get a complicated question coming in here. Andy Behrens, this is a long one. All right, and it comes from Elijah. Elijah says, I have a good problem, and I like the fact that he acquiesces it's a good problem. In my 12-team standard scoring league, sit one of Tyreek, Mike Evans, questionable with Monday night game, I have no sub, Aaron Jones, Chase Brown, Jamison Williams. I know it's probably JMO, but I'm in love with his upside and don't like my inflexibility with Evans. Andy, what do you think?
I think it's always a little awkward when they kind of sort of tell you the answer that they want to hear. Clearly, what you want here is to sit Mike Evans. I just got to say, like, if you're uptight because Mike Evans has an injury designation on a Thursday, this game might not be for you, because that's going to be the case the rest of the season. That's just how it goes with Mike Evans, and then he usually ends up playing, and he's always a good bet to score a touchdown. So I would be hoping for Mike Evans in this one, and I would try to find any kind of pivot on Monday night if I possibly could. You got 2 games on Monday night, so I'm going to play him. I'm not going to sit Jamison Williams. I would probably actually sit Chase Brown here. It's close. I like all your options, as you say. It's a good problem.
Yeah, I just like the way you asked the question. It's kind of like the fantasy football equivalent of does this dress make me look fat? They're fishing for the same answer. Okay. The answer to that, guys, is always no. All right, weekend injury report. Let's get some injuries, some did not practices from today that are significant. Jonathan Taylor with an ankle injury, Jerome Ford with the hamstring injury, and then Ramondre Stevenson with a foot injury. So a lot of questions about Jerome Ford and what that will mean. Also, we got Deontay Johnson with an ankle, Jakobi Meyers with an ankle, Dallas Goedert with an ankle. They're all over the place. But let me ask you about Jerome Ford particularly, because with this hamstring, and then Nick Chubb is maybe out here. Like, Sal, what are we doing here with this running back situation?
Yeah, I think it's messy. And first off, like Nick Chubb returning in less than 14 months from an injury that's usually 18 to 24 months for most people is just amazing. It's great. He's been practicing in full this week. He's definitely returning. But Kevin Stefanski kind of set some expectations already. He said, like, yeah, we don't really know what we're going to get from Nick Chubb. We want to have him for the long term, which means we're probably getting a limited role. And that makes sense. This is something that you ramp a running back up from, a major injury to his knee. Basically, every single thing that went wrong could have been that knee injury, but now he's back. And look, this backfield is going to probably be 2 to 3 different guys. Pierre Strong on passing downs, Nick Chubb as much as he could handle the early downs. But even if he looks like the same player, Nick Chubb, rest of season, it's still a brutal situation. And that's a big if he's the same guy. You're coming into one of the worst offensive lines in the league. With Deshaun Watson back there not playing well, not having time, and now not having Amari Cooper, it's a gross spot. I don't want to start any of these guys. And maybe it could be like a sell high spot for Nick Chubb since the stock is rising just because he's returning.
All right, let's turn to our fantasy game changers for this week. Powered by Ram Trucks, where we're identifying some of the most impactful players in one of the top fantasy matchups on the schedule. Seahawks versus Falcons, early window on Sunday. One of the top totals of the week, 51 on that one. Big point spread. This is the moment that we all love. Like, everybody sees points, everybody sees big points, totals. This feels good. So, Andy, give me a fantasy game changer that you've got your eye on.
Yeah, really fun game. Give me Bijon Robinson. He finally gave us one of those games last week, right? The sort that we expect from a first-round fantasy pick. Finished with 18 touches against Carolina, over 100 total yards, 2 touchdowns. And Tyler Algier was good as well. Algier isn't going away. He's a good player. but Robinson, just a great back. There's one or two things that he does every game that just make you say, oh, that's probably the best back in football. Perfect modern era running back. He's headed for a 60 catch season, efficient on a per touch basis. He crushed a favorable matchup last week, and he gets another with Seattle on deck this week. The Seahawks have allowed 5 yards per carry on the season, over 140 rushing yards per game, which is obviously near the bottom of the league. Given the matchup and given what we just saw from Bijon, I'd say that an overall RB1 finish is definitely within his range of outcomes this week. Algier can still be useful too. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but Robinson, to me, a true game changer.
I mean, that's a great take by you. I will stick with the Falcons offense and give you a fantasy game changer because of targets, and that's Drake London. The number we need to consider is 10, 13, and 12. Those are the targets each of the last 3 weeks, respectively, for Drake London. What we are seeing at this point is that Kirk Cousins is becoming really comfortable forcing the ball into tight windows to Drake. And as much as we have our eye on Kyle Pitts and what everything means, what we know is that Kirk likes big wide receivers and tight ends. He finds that guy, he zeroes in on that guy. It's happening right now with Drake London, who is using his body to box out like he's a basketball player, and he's getting tough catches. I really love where Drake is in this offense, but most importantly, I love that Kirk is finding him in this offense. And once Kirk has rhythm with the guy, he does not stop. That's part of what makes Kirk Cousins good at his job. I think the numbers are going to be through the roof the rest of the year. It's time to start recalibrating how we talk about Drake London because he's having a season and it's not going to end. All right, Sal, give me somebody you've got as a game changer.
Yeah, I'm looking at DK Metcalf, who is the clear #1 receiver on this Seattle Seahawks team, and everything we wanted this offseason with new play caller Ryan Grubb coming from Washington, coming from college football. We wanted more passing, more downfield shots, and we're getting that right now with DK Metcalf. This entire offense leads the NFL in pass attempts per game, Geno Smith. DK Metcalf, through his first 6 games this year, has his most targets of his career. He ranks top 5, nearly 10 targets per game right now. He's an alpha receiver, and if you look at his game logs lately, you're like, oh, it hasn't hit 10 fantasy points in back-to-back games. Yeah, that's not really his fault, I would say. He's been getting extremely unlucky. A couple weeks back, tackled on the 1-yard line. Last Thursday, if you recall watching that game, 50-plus yard touchdown called back for kind of a phantom illegal shift. Then he had a touchdown just missed by like an inch of the back of the end zone. Only had 3 catches on 11 targets in that game. He was frustrated, but I think those frustrations will change this week against Atlanta in a positive matchup. A lot of points expected there. And then moving forward, he has a lot of good spots. Buffalo, the Cardinals. I think this is a guy who can pop off the next 5 to 6 weeks in fantasy.
I gotta love it. All right, let's get you some bold predictions. This is where Andy Behrens tells us that the sky is blue someday. So I did have a bold prediction for Week 7, something you can't wait to just break to the world. Andy Behrens, what do you got for us?
Give me Tank Dell. Okay, I was going to hedge again and call Tank Dell perhaps a top 10 receiver. But just because you called me out, let's say Tank Dell finishes as a top 5 fantasy receiver this week. That is a pretty high mark for someone with 1 touchdown, averaging fewer than 40 receiving yards per game. I just thought Dell looked more like the pre-injury version of himself last week. We saw sort of the full speed, quick change of direction ability. He caught 7 passes. He found the end zone. Ton of first read targets for him. He's only rarely coming off the field right now, too. He's playing over 70% of the snaps. He is desperately needed with Nico Collins sidelined by injury. Dell gets a pretty friendly matchup this week, too, in a fun game at Lambeau Field against a Packers defense that has allowed the 8th most passing yards per game. Green Bay they're a funny defense because they're pretty opportunistic, a lot of takeaways, but they have also been pretty beatable. And for a quarterback like CJ Stroud, they're going to be especially beatable. We should get a shootout in this one and probably the first double-digit target total of the season for Dell. So I'd say play him with great confidence. Again, I think a top 5 finish is within the range of outcomes.
I'll give you a bold prediction that, frankly, I should tip a cap to Tara Roberts, who's with us on Sundays, because she's been big on Anthony Richardson, and I have not, right? And I have just absolutely spent most weeks being hard on where Anthony Richardson is. So this is a bold prediction because of my past takes on Anthony Richardson. I think our guy's about to go off this weekend. I think Anthony Richardson is about to have one of those big Anthony Richardson games that makes you say, oh, yeah, that's why they drafted the guy. I talked to him this week for Yahoo Sports. Go check the interview out. In the process to talk to him, instead of speculating about what he's doing in that offense, I flat out asked him why he's running the football less. And I flat out asked him if he's changing his game. And he was pretty adamant that the answer to those questions are no. He's also pretty adamant that he's 100% at this point. He feels ready and raring to go. Also, he was pretty adamant that he hears what we say about his development. I think you got a guy that's coming in that's been champing at the bit, that is ready to step in. By the way, champing, not chomping. And by the way, is just ready to step in and show exactly his full range of capability. This feels like one of those games against the Dolphins defense that is okay, where Anthony is going to have some big runs. He's going to have some big moments. We're going to see him utilize every tool in the tool chest, because in talking to him, I think he's ready to go off. So even though I've been tough on Anthony Richardson, this is a week to play him. I think he's going to put up big numbers. Champing, not chomping, by the way. Anybody want to look that up? It's a little known fact. Sal, instead of talking about horses and the way they bite down on things, why don't you give us your bold prediction?
Yeah, my bold prediction is that the running back one on the week for week 7 is going to be Panthers back Chuba Hubbard. Now, this guy, since week 2, is second in fantasy points behind only Derrick Henry, and he's been one of the best real-life running backs in the entire league. Now, he's coming off, kind of quietly, his best work of the year. 82% of the snaps, 86% of the running back carries. He's a clear RB1. The usage is fantastic. And now he gets a matchup against the Commanders, who allow the most explosive runs of 10-plus yards this year. While Chuba Hubbard ranks top 5 in that category, they allow the 4th most rushing yards per play. Well, Chuba Hubbard's averaging 5.6 yards per carry this year behind a very good interior line of this Panthers team that they invested heavily in this offseason, that guard play. The guy looks great, and the matchup looks good. I'm saying Chuba Hubbard this week is the RB1 overall. Goes for over 150 yards, and you might think that's the first time he's done it this year. No, he's already hit that mark. Chuba Hubbard's got to be in your lineups, #1 overall running back for week 7.
All right, huddle up, boys. It's time for some hurry-up offense. We're going to get questions in. You can throw them into the YouTube chat as well. We'll be answering them as we go. We put the clock up. The first question comes from Sean, who says, Cortland Sutton or Josh Downs? Help! My mind is overheating. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Oh, you got to cool your mind, first of all. Maybe a wet towel, something like that. Calm down. I'm going to go Josh Downs here. I agree with Fitz on Anthony Richardson, and I realize that a lot of the value to Richardson is about the rushing game, but I think everything that Downs has been doing can translate to a Richardson offense.
You got it in there. We'll give you credit for that. All right. Mike Miro says, lost Shaheed. Do we have the guts to start Bub Means or wait until the injury landscape to play out this week and pick someone up? Options on the wire. Goodson, Liget, Bateman. Ask FFL. Sal, I'm asking you.
Oh, my guy, Mike, I am not starting Bub Memes tonight. Short week, Spencer Rattler, bottom 3 offensive line against a top 5 secondary. Even without Surtain, it's still a great secondary. Yeah, give me any of those other names, but I'll take Goodson with Taylor and Sermon banged up.
What I just heard was give me anybody other than Bub, and I love it. Azuri11 said, starting Denver D over 49ers D is a no-brainer, right? Andy Behrens?
Yeah, the Niners get Patrick Mahomes, and the Denver defense gets Spencer Rattler and all these AI-generated receivers that he's going to be throwing to. I absolutely want to start the Denver defense tonight, no question about it.
I love the concept of just asking ChatGPT, can you make a wide receiver, and seeing if they can come up with something better. All right, Raymond coming in on the chat says, Javonte Williams or taking Campbell on Jaylen Warren or Sweet Baby Ray Davis? I added Sweet Baby. What do you think, Sal?
Honestly, I don't hate Ray Davis this week, but I'll take the sure thing tonight in Javonte Williams, who honestly, the last 3 weeks, the role's been pretty strong. 16 opportunities per game, a pretty impressive 18% target share. I think I'm loading up on Javonte Williams tonight. Outside of Kamara, he's like the only other guy I want to be starting in either of these offenses.
All right, we're going to get to the YouTube chat where I got to go to Dwayne, who, based on the YouTube chat, is also a big Yankees fan. They're up 4-3 late in game 3. I just love the fact that Dwayne is side watching us while also doing this. So we got to get the question. Says, guys, please help. Running backs are Barkley, Henry, wide receivers, London, Jay Williams. Who should I start at flex, Monty or Chuba? Thank you, fellas. Good luck tonight. Andy Behrens, what do you think? That's a lot.
Oh my goodness. I literally have rosters where any one of these players would be the best player on the team. This is crazy. Give me Chuba, I guess, for all the reasons that Sal mentioned earlier.
Okay, I like that. All right, and we get deep cut. Magic K9 says, better to start tonight, Tipton or Devon Vale? Sal?
I'll take Devon Vale, however you want to pronounce his last name. I'm going to be going there. He's a big body receiver at this point, and I think that especially if they can get to the red zone, which is going to be a big question tonight, he's probably who's somebody a little bit better chances compared to Tipton to score a touchdown.
Yeah, I just love that we're at that spot where we're asking Tipton or Vale. All right, there we go. Let's get back to are we getting one? Yes, we're getting more. And Less Jam says flex spot, Connor, Ayuk, or Cooper. Ask FFL. Andy Behrens, I'm asking you.
Oh, man, we are going to hit a point in this season when the right answer to this is Amari Cooper, I think. He's going to be a great fit. probably second half of the year. But for this week, I'm going to go James Conner. I don't think Cooper quite up to speed just yet.
Look at that. You got extra time left on the clock. We'll go to Taylor Prezano, which is just a badass sounding last name. Hashtag AskFFL says, should I start Javonte Williams or Tyler Algier? What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, I just want to put this disclaimer out there. I'm not a real big Javonte Williams guy, but on these last few questions, I mean, it really seems like it. So, for same reasons I said earlier, give me Javonte, and especially when you compare it to Tyler Algier, who I know he had a bunch of carries last week. Most weeks he will see somewhere around 10 to 12 carries, but I'll take Javonte, who I feel pretty secure about 15 touches tonight.
All right, let me get in Mojo here. Says, Mojo, should I start the Bengals or Broncos defense this week? Ask FFL. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, they're both pretty good starts, but the Broncos defense is an actual good defense. And again, we're getting Spencer Rattler and just some made-up receivers. So your opportunity here for a bunch of sacks, a couple of takeaways, it's just so strong with the Broncos. It's almost guaranteed. So I'm definitely starting Denver here.
Next question comes from Spobros No, which is not easy for me to say. AR, Drake, or T-Law? Sad Fields noises. Wah, wah. What do you think? Oh, super flex.
I'm actually going to go, assuming Drake May is good to go, I'm going to be going with Drake May in this one. Barring that MRI results, it seems like he practiced today, so he's good. I just like the possibility of the matchup. One, possibility with his legs, and two, the matchup against the Jaguars, who allow the most passing yards per game. You're probably secure for at least 2 to 3 points on the ground with the upwards of 10 plus if he finds the end zone.
All right, let's go to YouTube where we get one from, I think it's Digger4040. Says, hey, fellas, Sutton tonight or Juju Sunday? Thank you. Andy Behrens, what do you think?
Oh, boy, do I go with Bo Nix's #1 receiver? Do I go with Patrick Mahomes' #1 receiver? I'm gonna go Juju Smith-Schuster here. I know maybe you're scared of the San Francisco matchup, but I think that role that Juju had the last time we saw him, I think that's real rest of season.
All right, we'll get one more in from YouTube. This one comes from S.J. White, who says, Anthony Richardson or Sam Darnold? Help. What do you think, Sal?
Yeah, it's got to be Sam Darnold for me. He's actually a top 5 quarterback in my rankings, believe it or not, this week. He's coming back from the bye. He's healthy. Most of that passing game is healthy at this point with Jordan Addison. They're even getting TJ Hawkinson back soon. And it's a nice matchup. No Aiden Hutchinson to worry about for the first game for Detroit. I think he's going to have time to throw.
All right, guys, remember, Sunday morning, early. Get your fantasy lineup set. When you're out raging Saturday night in Halloween costumes, get your lineup set because Sunday morning is going to be early and it's going to surprise you. It's a 9:30 a.m. Eastern kickoff for Patriots and Jags. Make sure your lineup set. And then we're back at noon Eastern to get you from noon to 1 for all of your questions, the late breaking news. We will have it right here. So we always appreciate you hanging out with us on Thursday. Make sure you hang out with us on Sunday as well. On behalf of everybody that works their butts off to make this show happen, we're incredibly thankful for them. He's Sal Vetri. He's Andy Behrens. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching Fantasy Football Live, presented by Ram Trucks.